2, 3. Just give me patience, yeah.
Yo! What is up, Z-Pack? It's your boy Z-Dog MD. We're live and direct out of Z Studios, and it is 4th of July long weekend. What?
Happy America Day, y'all.
America.
Suck it, England.
And I'm proud to be an American, where at least I know I can Facebook live cast and get stuff for free really quick, and also demand instant gratification and opioids. All right, guys. Today, we've been doing some really heavy discussions about the violence in New York at Bronx-Lebanon Hospital. We did a show this morning about that. We've been talking about Silent No More, our hashtag about healthcare worker violence. It's been heavy duty. Today, we're going to continue that because we're going to talk about the new interns and residents that are swarming on the wards right now and this idea of medical culture and bullying in particular. And you know what made me think about this was actually this Doc Henry Bello, who shot up the ward and killed people and injured people at Bronx-Lebanon Hospital. He had sent an email to the New York Post 2 hours prior to committing this atrocity where he effectively played the victim and said he was the victim of bullying and this smear campaign that prevented him from getting licensed and residency and all the other crap that he was looking for, that he was accused of sexual harassment and that people pushed him out. And then he went to the hospital to kill the people who did this to him. Now, this is a great example of how incredibly screwed up our medical culture is. And it's not just medical culture, it's all of American culture in general. But it's a great example of how we're clearly missing something here. One person's bullying is another person's appropriate supervision, is another person's sexual harassment, is another person's butthurt. And so I want to talk about medical culture in particular because as we have interns and residents now, and by the way, Tom, we talk a lot about interns coming on the wards and that being a big thing in July and the July effect and everything. But for me, the biggest transition wasn't going into internship. Okay, that was terrifying and all that. But what really was the most dramatic transition was going from intern to second year resident. Because the second year residency position, you're now supervising the interns, you're teaching, you're running a team, you're making decisions independently. And that was actually the biggest transition for me. And if we're talking today about bullying and medical culture, and the title of this was Pimpin' Ain't Easy When Everyone's a Snowflake. Pimping, for those who don't know, for the muggles in the audience, pimping is a classic medical cultural thing where you aggressively ask your students or the people you're supervising questions in a very upfront and sometimes belligerent and confrontational and shaming way. And this has been a part of culture for as long as I've been in medicine. You get pimped, meaning, hey, Demania, tell me the 15 reasons for acute flash pulmonary edema. And you're like, gout? And he's like, that's absolutely not a cause of acute flash pulmonary edema, so you shut your hole because you're dumb. That's an example of pimping with a side of shaming. And I've been a victim of it, and I have victimized others with it as an attending. The difference is, it seemed like when I did it, we sort of had an understanding where it was like, we're here to help you learn, and we're going to do it in a kind of an engaging and fun way. So I actually tried not to do the shaming piece, but I did pimp very, very hard, and I continue to. What I've seen, though, over time is that the culture's changed, Tom, where now we have this kind of snowflake mentality where people just don't expect to be treated with a level of discipline and rigor, and they interpret it as meanness. And I just don't think it's true. And there we have, I love it when Logan surprised me with the meme. It's Obi-Wan for the people on the podcast. It says, I felt a great disturbance in the force, as if a million snowflakes all melted at once. That is what it feels like now. So what we want to talk about today is we want to talk about what is sort of medical culture, what's acceptable, what's bullying, is it in the eye of the bully holder to see, is it bullying or is it actually just part of the culture of a disciplined thing. In the old days in boot camp in the military, you would get your butt beat down, you would get, pretty traumatized, but you'd come out a hella strong soldier. Now, and the same was sort of true in the arcane world of medicine, where it was this sort of militaristic culture. Now, this is slowly starting to shift, but we see abuses of what comes out of this culture constantly. So there was just an article in Kevin MD that actually prompted me to do this show where it was an anonymous physician, which, by the way, I'm going to say something right now. If you can't put your name on something, okay, then you need to not write it. That's what I think.
I think that's anti the hashtag we've been doing with Silent No More. You know, it goes against the very culture of it.
It goes against it. Now, I understand people are afraid of retribution. They're afraid of getting in trouble. They're afraid. But the whole point of this article from Anonymous Physician was he witnessed a horrible piece of bullying against a nurse by a surgeon in the OR, where the surgeon yelled and screamed at this nurse, made her cry in front of a pediatric patient and all this stuff. And it was totally, you know, you can argue whether even the initial complaint was appropriate. It was a mispositioning of a blanket on the patient or something like that. And he then went through the different types of bullying. There's direct bullying, secondary bullying, accomplice bullying, all kinds of stuff. And we'll put a link to the article when we're done. But the idea that you would write that anonymously, to me, signifies a failure of courage. If you're talking about standing up to bullies, if you're talking about changing the culture, put your name on the article. When I go out here and I take these stands, it's me, it's my face, it's my name, it's my family, it's my studio, it's my friends and colleagues. You know exactly who's saying it, and if you disagree, you can disagree with us publicly or privately, and we can have the conversation, right? But it's definitely a failure of discourse if we're not allowing to do that. And in a way, it's a kind of snowflake-ish behavior.
Totally.
It's like, you know, I can't handle the, you know, I'm just gonna. So anyways, that out of the way. The idea of bullying, so screaming at someone, shaming them, causing them intentional hurt and shaming. Is that a productive way to do medicine? Now, I'm going to argue it's not, but I'm going to say in the same breath, we have gotten very soft as a society on the ability to have a normal discourse, and sometimes that means disagreeing loudly. It doesn't mean shouting and screaming and acting like a freaking 3-year-old like surgeons are wont to do and some doctors are wont to do. And listen, guys, nurses, you're not off the hook. You know you do this. You do this to interns. You do this to residents. You do this to each other. Nurses are some of the biggest bullies I've seen in the hospital, and that's just because I think partially this culture trickles to them. And so doctors are horrible, nurses are horrible, right? We treat each other like crap, we bully each other, and we bully our students. So now as interns and residents swarm onto the wards in the July effect, as we call it, we need to be very cognizant of this. And what do we tell an intern? What are we gonna, what are we gonna advise them? I'm gonna say, stand up for yourself, but also understand that this is gonna be a tough route. Don't expect bullying or allow it to slide, but at the same time, expect some tough stuff. Expect to be taught with a lot of discipline, and expect under stress, people will sometimes behave badly, and you can call them on it, and there can be apologies. But consistent shaming and bullying is not an effective way to do it. Now, when I pimp people, it's always in the spirit of let's learn stuff. And also, I'm often wrong. So I will be the first to admit when I don't know something and I ask an intern or a resident to teach me. I ask the nurses to teach me. I ask the respiratory therapist to teach me. The dietitians are always teaching me stuff that I'm disagreeing with because I'm like, that ain't the problem, son. It's carbs. But that's just me.
Well, I can imagine that you probably got in trouble back in your day in the hospital.
I'm not 100 years old, Tom. What do you mean my day? I'm still in the hospital, okay?
I just mean when back when you were training and when you got out,
You guys are patriotic AF right now. That's all I know.
I don't even know what you're talking about, Zay.
No, so say what you said again to me.
Well, what I'm basically saying is, I'm sure that you got in trouble for your language and the way you purported yourself back in the day with interns and with others because we all know that you're prone to hyperbole, you're prone to, these, you're just crazy, Zay. I mean, that's what I'm trying to say.
You haven't even begun to see crazy, you piece of... There it is. No, actually, Tom, it's interesting that you bring this up. So you guys have seen me rant and rave on the show. You guys have heard my language. You guys know who I am. Butthurt is not an excuse. And even though my elephant is fairly progressive, I tolerate no political correctness in my presence. Now, I have always been that way. I once got in trouble, an attending physician at UCSF, we were sitting around rounding, and he said, okay, well, guys, after after this, we're going to go, we take this urine down to the lab and we'll spin it down ourselves and we'll look at the sediment, we'll look for casts, we'll look for different findings that will be consistent with this gentleman's glomerulonephritis. And I said, oh, hell yeah. And after that, we spin it down, we put it on ice, and we do shots. Because boom, urine. You know what I mean? Urine on ice. Needless to say, that was the time. Actually, that was the time that the attending said, Demania, you speak and then think. I'd like you to reverse that. Or better yet, just think. And that was the culture, right? Like I couldn't make a kind of vaguely off-color joke without getting beaten down, especially, oh my gosh, because I was a medical student. I had a short frickin' white coat, Tom Heineber, and a short coat never opens their mouth unless they're spoken to in the old school medical culture, right? Nowadays, it's like even the medical students are wearing long white coats. So the hierarchical elements are smoothed over, but you couldn't even open your mouth. And I got yelled at by multiple attendings. One attending, a gastroenterologist, remember I wanted to do GI. I wanted to be an ass man, Tom Heineber and Logan Stewart. I wanted to probe where many men have probed before for money. That was my career path. I changed my mind because the attending gastroenterologist, I forget his name at UCSF because I would name names because I don't give an F. He told me towards the end of the rotation that I did, he said, you know your problem, Demania? You think you're an attending. You speak when you're not spoken to. And you need to shut up and just sit there. And I was like, no. So when I became an attending, nothing in me changed, but I encouraged my medical students and residents to open their mouth, to speak when they're not spoken to, and to engage me on my terms. So I was cursing. I was always trying to start race wars within the team. It didn't matter what races they were. I wanted them to talk openly about race, which, oh my gosh, really? The attending did that? Constantly pushing. We had an amazing time. I would win teaching awards. And you know what happened? The only time I got in trouble was when, and this is a special type of snowflake, there was a psych intern. And this was towards the end of my career, so it was at this point they'd pulled away most of our house staff, and it was just me, the attending hospitalist, and a rotating intern. So it would be a different intern every 2 weeks or every month. And sometimes you would get psychiatry transitional interns, sometimes you get derm interns, sometimes you get internal medicine categorical interns. And so there was a lot of variability. Some of the psych interns were the smartest, most hardworking interns that I had, but some of them weren't. Now, the one that I had was one of those who pretty quickly it was clear she had some sort of axis 2 not otherwise specified personality disorder, and that was just my ghetto diagnosis. There was a lot of stuff going on. So one day, and remember, it's just me and her. There's no other resident in between. I got paged at 4 in the morning by her on a day when we weren't on call. I woke up, my wife woke up. Do you know why, Tom? Because a real doctor in those days and in these days keeps their pager on because there is no one else to back them up, right? And if something's going on, I would rather hear about it than not hear about it. Except when it's this, 4 a.m., text page. Dr. Demania, are we still rounding at 8 today? 4 a.m. So I text paged back using the phone, because that's what we did in those days. This was probably 7 years ago, maybe 6 years ago. I text back and said, thank you, Dr. So-and-so. My wife also thanks you, who you woke up. And I thank you for waking me up at 4 a.m. to tell me what we already decided yesterday, which is yes, we are rounding at 8 a.m. Well, do you know what she did? She took the pager with the alphanumeric thing that I wrote, marched it straight up to Graduate Medical Affairs, the head of Graduate Medical Affairs, and something, I forget her name. And she goes, this doctor, this attending, my attending is bullying me. Look at this. And showed Anne this text.
That is just pure snowflake behavior right there, Z. Pure snowflake.
I hate you two so much, and yet I love you. See? Now see that, what I just said, I hate you two so much? They know it's in jest. It could be construed as bullying. So in any event, of course, I get a call from Graduate Medical Affairs, and they're like, Dr. Demania, the intern has expressed some concern with a bullying attitude and showed us a text. And I'm like, cool, what did the text say? You woke me and my wife up at 4 a.m. to ask when we were going around? Right. Okay, so Anne, what would you do in that situation? Would you let that sort of inappropriate communication go, or would you say something? Well, I would say something. Okay, so I said something. And they let it go. And for the rest of the rotation, she kind of continued to devolve until ultimately this poor young lady was actually asked to leave her program because she had a series of personality issues that caused her to have to leave the program. So the bottom line is, look, there is a distinction between bullying, teaching, and having a certain type of camaraderie culture and using humor as a teaching mechanism, as a coping mechanism, as a binding tool. And we have to discuss the differences. Is it okay to yell and shame someone? No. And if you do it under stress, because we all get to that point, we get pushed to that point. I've yelled on the phone and then I've apologized. I will call back and apologize. And one of the things I think that is incumbent on us is that when we treat someone in a way that we feel regret or embarrassment, we need to follow up and make it right, and that's part of any good working culture. Now, there are some people in healthcare that do have psychopathic traits. In other words, they just don't feel empathy that well. They are very aggressive. They have a meanness to them, and sometimes they can be tremendous physicians because they're technically very good at what they do. They're very focused on what they do, and so to exclude them from medicine is a tricky piece. But I think we really do need to set up a sort of general parameter that if you behave that way, there are going to be consequences. And it doesn't necessarily have to be purely administration. It should be your peers that push back on you, right? Now, going back to this guy, Michael Bello at
Henry Bello.
Sorry, Henry Bello. I
Henry
keep calling
Bello.
him Michael. I have some like deep
Hatred of Michael's.
hatred of Michael, even though my best friend is named Michael.
So in this guy's world, I mean, he was bullied, he said. What's your take on his stance, which is obviously stupid?
Is
There's
that Bill Clinton and
with
Monica
an
Lewinsky?
alligator,
That's amazing.
and Ronald McDonald's in the background with a machine
That's
gun.
incredible, Logan. Your mind is so deeply disturbed. That's why I love you. Well, yeah, so in his mind, he was bullied. But now remember, in his mind, there's something deeply wrong because he went into a hospital with a gun. And on top of that, it's more information coming out about how he spent time in particular homeless shelters that were designed for people who are suffering or recovering from addiction. So there was something else going on with Henry Bello that is different than a bullied victim, all right? He has some kind of delusion going on. And as these stories trickle in and we hear from people who've worked with him, et cetera, it's going to become a little more clear what's going on. I think it's time for some comments. What do you think, Tom?
Real quick though, we always talk about holacracies and finding things that are more true. Well, how do you find things that are more true in a world in which everyone has their own truth?
So it's worth spending a second on this. One of the great glories of postmodern thought is that all viewpoints have validity. It just depends on the perspective of the observer. And that is a truth. But it is also true that some viewpoints are less moral, less just, less good for the functioning of society, and less true in an absolute sense than others. It's just as simple as that. So as we go beyond that, right, and encompass that truth, we need to realize some shit just is wrong. And if we don't have the balls to stand up and say that in healthcare or across our system, right, we are going to fall into chaos and what they call aperspectival madness, where every perspective is equal, therefore no perspective is true, and I, as a serial murderer, am just as right from my point of view as everyone else. Bullshit. Is it time to read some comments?
Let's read some comments.
All right.
Let's see.
So this is interesting. Amanda Farmer. I work in pharmacy as a tech. Pharmacy techs are on the front lines of getting a shit ton of bullying, by the way. And I had a daughter come to me just today and apologize to us for the way her mother was acting. Isn't that amazing? Did that make it better for you, Amanda, or were you just so desensitized to all the horrible ways that patients behave because they're stressed and they feel a lack of control and all the other reasons that they do that, or they're just mean people? Did it make you feel better to have the daughter come and apologize, right? Now, we have someone in our studio audience today, a nurse practitioner in the emergency department here in town. He is one of our Patreon $5 and up a week donors, and we're really thankful to him. He came by to be in the studio audience today. And we were talking right before, and by the way, tremendous guy. We were talking right before about being bullied. And he told a story that was really quite revelatory. He said, the worst bullying I ever got, we all have doctors yell at us and nurses yell at us and other staff yell at us and so on. The worst he ever felt, and it wasn't bullying, it was more being shamed, was he was taking care of a young kid. Was he a teenager? Yeah, teenager. And the kid had sort of status dramaticus and was like, oh, I'm so weak. My parents have to carry me to the bathroom and this and that. And he had basically a viral URI with some flu symptoms. So our friend in the audience said, you know, sometimes you just kind of basically have to toughen up and don't make your parents carry you to the bathroom. Like sometimes you get up and you go to the bathroom. You just got to man up. And gave him whatever and sent him home. Well, the next day he came back in diffuse pulmonary edema. And it turns out this was one of those very rare cases where viral syndrome pneumonitis, everything was clear the day before, viral pneumonitis progressed to flash pulmonary edema and I presume some variant of ARDS, et cetera. And as the kid was being stabilized and he walked by, the mom came to him and said, oh, yeah, you know, he really should have manned up, huh? That worked really well. Something along those lines. I'm not doing it justice. And our friend here said he just, you know, immediately felt that like a kick to the gut. And he was already feeling bad. He already felt like, did I miss something, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And then to hear this from the mom was a very shaming kind of thing. And we all go through that, guys. Like, and I don't know that that's bullying, but I think what that is it's part of our culture when we're taking care of people in life and death situations that we are sensitive, right? And we also tend to project our own concerns and fears onto others when we bully others. And I think a little bit of self-reflection, perception, remember I've said like this idea of being the witness of your actions and emotions, stepping back and taking a breath and seeing what's going on rather than doing a shitty first draft and just acting on something, or if you do act on it, having a second draft and apologizing or revising what's going on. I think that's so powerful in healthcare. If we could all just do that as an action item, just take a breath before we act, maybe sit on an email before we hit send, I think it would transform how we treat each other in the hospital, right? Other comments?
John Paul Europa says, I feel like there's an anti-PC movement, including President 45. However, it is counterproductive if political incorrectness is without intelligent thought and discussion, as Logan puts up George Washington with a 50 cal.
I did.
If George Washington were alive today, he would have a 50 cal, he would have a Twitter account, and he would take absolutely no prisoners. It would be, you know, at #1. There it is. There's Abraham Lincoln with some kind of automatic
That's the Emancipation
rifle.
Proclamation, son, and he's riding a grizzly bear and has a machine gun.
One more time.
What better way to be emancipated than a high caliber automatic rifle?
Goddamn right.
I like that. So here's the thing. If you look at our commander-in-chief, he's tweeting out these, you know, what some are interpreting as very bullying, immature comments, but at the same time, his argument is, well, the press gets to say anything about me and I don't get to fight back. So here's my way of fighting back in a non-PC way. So it's interesting. I'm not a fan of Trump, you guys know this, but I'm starting to increasingly see why what he does resonates with people who are sick and tired of a politically correct snowflake culture. We need to have an open discourse. Now, bullying and shaming people based on their looks, but a lot of people do that to Trump. So he's got the hair and the whole thing. But he has one supporter at least who will never waver, and that is my boy right here, Logan.
What? I did find the tweet this morning absolutely hilarious, but
Did you see what happened this morning?
Yeah, so what he did today was he took old WWE footage of him at a wrestling match, and he replaced the person that he was attacking right in the wrestling match with a CNN head, and he was basically going off the top rope on the CNN heads. And of course, the press was like, President advocates violence against CNN.
Well, that's what the CNN correspondents were on the news saying, oh, you know, if there's blood, it's going to be on the president's hands and these kinds of things. And so it's both sides are terrible.
Yeah. Yeah, and it is.
Although Trump's worse. I mean, he's the worst.
Trump is pretty bad, you guys. He's pretty bad.
He's amazing.
If we're talking about this culture, it's hard when this kind of tone is set from high above. So we can agree or disagree about politics of what he's doing, but I think I'm going to take a stance and say I think the behavior is something that is not presidential. Now, of course, Bill Clinton having sex with whoever or not having sex with whoever is also not very presidential. So we can be transpartisan in our disdain for bad behavior in our politicians. Cynthia Lentz, Doc Z, I apologize. I can't remember what for, but just hear my apology. I hear your apology, Cynthia, and you are absolved, my child. I had a physician yelling at me one day, says Jamie Mackey, Bellin Mackey, and I finally looked at him and I said, not my patient, do not yell at me again. And then I figured I was fired. Wait. Let me read this again because I'm missing this. I finally looked at him and said, not my patient, do not yell at me again. And then I figured I was fired. Instead, he wrapped his arm around me and apologized, and we went about our day. Oh my gosh. That's amazing. That gets a slow clap from the Z-Dog. By the way, yes, I called myself the Z-Dog because I'm an insane, raging narcissist. America!
You've reached a new level here today, Z, and I appreciate it.
The Z-Dog hears you, Tom Heineberg, and he understands you, and he understands America. Let's keep reading.
By the way, somebody wanted to know if that was a tracksuit behind you, and I'm going to allow you to indulge yourself for 1 second. Tell the people, Z.
I'm sorry. Are we in America? This is not a tracksuit. This is a real NASCAR racing outfit, okay? Legit. I think it says Z-Dog, and then look at the back. I used this for a gig that we did at HIMSS, the Health Information Management and BS Society, and let me just tell you, I was Ricky Bobby that day. So no, it's not a tracksuit. Yes, it's dope AF. Other comments. Some units use a no bully rule where if someone is bullied, individuals who witness will go stand with the bullied person without speaking. The bully is likely to stand down then. Alyssa Jelenik.
I see.
Right, but then what if the bully's like, these guys are bullying me by standing around. Here's the meme. I'm going to drive and go real fast and turn to the left sometimes. Wow.
Cartman's got NASCAR down.
He kind of does, man.
Ann wants to know if we stole that plant again. You know what, Ann, just between you and me, yeah, we did.
Yeah, we procured a chloroplast secreting entity with xylem and phloem and a cell wall structure from the lobby facility in our location for the express and sole purposes of being against medical advice live. I got your plant. You want it back? You got to fight me. America. America. That's better. Guys, it has been realer than real. Let's treat each other with some love and compassion for a change, and let's talk, let's have the dialogue about bullying. If you think I went too soft on bullies, let me know. If you think I went too hard and I'm a snowflake, let me know too. I don't know, what do you guys think?
I think it's time to make medicine great again, you guys. Not that it was ever that great.
I'm gonna go off the top ropes on Health 2.0 right now.
Just give me that.